good morning, everybody. My name is Daniele. I'm a member of the Poison Center team here in ECA. I hope you can hear me, yes. So it's a welcome to everybody. That's from my side, and it's a pleasure for me to kick off the activities of the day. So the intention of my first brief presentation is to give a background, just a few words about why we are here, and then try to set the scene, the regulatory and the regulatory aspect and the regulatory background. I will focus on some of the points which I consider more important, in particular who is supposed to do something because, under these provisions, the timing, and a brief overview of the information requirements. Some of this information may be already known. There are some news, because as Javier was mentioning, is work in progress. Everything keeps developing quite fast. And I will close with some short, important action points for you. So first of all, the background. Article 45 is not new. We know it. It was already there since the regulation entered into force, and was already setting some, defining some requirements. So there was already relatively clear who was supposed to do something. So it was mentioning in particular importer and downstream users. Why? The purpose of this is to collect information in order to be able to formulate preventative and corrective measures. And about what, basically? The point was to collect information on specific mixture, hazardous mixtures, and in particular information on the chemical composition. What was not clear so far was how. So basically the situation up to now, where we are now, is we have different information requirements in different member states. We have different submission systems. And one of the issues which were highlighted during the preparation for this new Annex 8 is the Poison Center actually had issue with the identification of the poisoning agents and mixture. So basically now we are here, Annex 8 has been published, is in place, and what it's about harmonization. So the point is that we want to have the same information requirements in every member state, and the preparation of this information to be submitted should be done using an harmonized format. And optionally, but hopefully using this central submission system provided by ECA. So the first point I want to highlight is who. So who is affected by this new requirement? Who is supposed to do something? We are talking about companies placing mixture on the market. So before placing the mixture on the market, and in every member state where you want to place on the market this mixture. And we are talking about mixture classified as hazardous on the basis of health and physical effect. So whoever is dealing with, for instance, substances or mixture not covered by CLP, as you can see on the slide, mixture classified only for the environment, mixture used only for research and development, or classified for specific other classes. These are outside the scope, so there are no submission requirements. Now, the Article 45 mentioned in particular two kind of operator, which are downstream user and importer. The supply chain includes several other operators according to the specific activities. The definition of all these operators that we are referring to are the definition which have been implemented so far under REACH and CLP over the last 10 and plus years. And as a reference, we always use the ECA guidance for downstream users, where you can find all the information about the different actors and how this should be interpreted. So Article 45 places direct obligation on specific operators in the supply chain. These are downstream users or importer, and all the company performing activities which can be classified as downstream use. For example, we have refiller, toll formulator, repackager, and formulator, exactly. The point here is that the objective is to make sure that the appointed body and eventually the Poison Center in every relevant member state receive the relevant information in order to be able to respond in emergency situation. And the supply chain includes several other operators that they perform activities which are not classified as downstream user activities. But all these operators, they have an obligation, all of them, downstream users and distributors, to make sure that they place on the market mixture which are CLP compliant. So basically the point and the latest interpretation, which will be also included in the guidance, you don't find at the moment in the version of the guidance which is published, but it will be updated soon. We will talk about the future later. So basically the point is that everybody has to make sure that the mixture placed on the market are CLP compliant. So distributors are actually potentially duty holder, but this is not triggered directly by Article 45, but rather Article 4. Now the point is that the responsibility to make sure that the mixture of CLP compliance has to be shared. Still, the Article 45 triggers specific submission obligation for this particular actor, so downstream users and importer. Distributors, they have to comply with their obligation, but they can do it not necessarily submitting a notification. I will try to explain with an example. I try to exemplify as much as possible, because the supply chain for sure is much more complicated than this. We have a formulator who is formulating a mixture, and he can place it on the market under, for instance, different trade names. And he supplies to different distributors, either in the same member state where he is located, or he can submit the mixture under another trade name in a different member state. So normally, the basic situation is that the formulator should submit to the appointed bodies in member state 1 and 2 in these cases, covering the relevant information. Now, the distributors, they may decide, for instance, to change the identifier of this product, so changing the trade name, for instance, or even to bring this product and place this product on a different market. So in order to be CLP compliance, these distributors, they have to make sure that the information is somehow available to the relevant member state. So they cannot just rely on the supplier and assuming that they will take care of everything. They have two options. As we said, Article 45 doesn't place on them specific submission obligation, but they can still do it. So if they want, they submit the information to the member state 1 and 3 in this case, because, for example, they want to protect their business. They don't want to inform the supplier about what they are doing. But this is not the only option. They can decide to inform the formulator. So they will inform the formulator that they are placing on the market a mixture, the same mixture under a different trade name, or they are placing the same mixture on a different market. In this case, the formulator has the obligation to include this information in his own notification. Now, when this has to be done, the deadlines are set by the regulation. We are still working toward this deadline. So according to the end use of the mixture, and I will simplify in the next, I will exemplify in the next slide. So according to the end use of the mixture, you have applicability deadline. So deadline or dates after which you cannot, or you have to submit Annex 8 compliant submission before placing the mixture on the market. Of course, there is a transition period. If a notification is already in place in a specific member state, then you don't need to submit a new notification, a new harmonized notification before the end of the transitional period, as long as there are no changes in the composition. So what does it mean, the end use of the mixture? Meaning that the mixture, when it's formulated by formulator 1, it may be used only in industrial settings. So then the deadline, the submission deadline, or the application date is 2024. As soon as the same mixture formulated by an original formulator in an industrial setting is used downstream in a product used for professional use or for consumer use, then the deadline changes according to the end use, so where the mixture ends at the end of the life cycle stage. Now, briefly, I will try to summarize which are the information requirements, providing a bit more detail of some of the aspects. We are supposed to use one single harmonized format provided by ECA. It has to include submitter's details, of course, the mixture information and product information, and I will come back to this. And then the UFI, which is one of the new elements which has created more problem that we were expected. So there's an important different distinction to be done between mixture and product. So the submission involves a mixture. What is mixture? Is a solution, is the chemical composition which has associated specific properties, exact composition, toxicological properties, maybe color and pH. This one mixture or mixture composition may be placed on the market under as different product, let's say. So one same submission may include different information about different trade names, packaging, labeling, and product category, as long as the composition remains the same. So the mixture will have associated information like other classification and labeling elements, the toxicological information, pH, physical state, color, and full composition. I will not go into detail now about this. We will have the chance to try it during the day. But of course, the composition has to be provided according to the knowledge that you have. You can indicate substances or mixture in the mixture if you're buying a mixture from a supplier and you're using it in your final mixture. And then product information, as I said, you can have different packaging types or packaging size, so you can have different use type for each product, and also different product categorization. Then the UFI, again, for somebody may be clear, for somebody a bit less how to use it. What it is a relatively simple, unique 16-character code. It's supposed to make a specific unique link between a product which is on the market and the information which has been submitted on the mixture. It's a code which needs to be included in the label and in the notification. We have some exemption, for example, for not packaged mixture or mixture which are used for industrial use only, then you can put it only on the STS and not on the label. The main rule is that it has to be assigned to one mixture composition. So to one UFI cannot correspond more than one mixture composition. Now, even so, the use and applicability of the UFI is quite flexible, meaning that according to the approach you decide to implement, you can decide, for example, to use one single UFI for all your product, as long as the mixture is the same. You can decide to assign to the same mixture different UFIs according to the country or according to the language. So there are different approaches that you can follow. The UFI can also be used to protect along the supply chain in the communication. For instance, if you don't want to disclose the full composition of the mixture that your customer is using, then you can provide the UFI. This can be done as long as the UFI, which will be included in your customer submission, has to be known to the appointed body. So you cannot use an empty UFI without information be submitted. You can use the same UFI along the supply chain as long as the composition remains the same. Important to underline that basically this can be done because you cannot retrieve information on the composition using the UFI itself. It's a code generated using different parameters. And now, since the UFI has to be created, ensure this unique link, as the UFI has to be updated as soon as there is a change in the composition, a variation beyond specific limit which are specified in Annex 8. Now, the UFI. There is a UFI generator available online for free, and this can be generated at any time by any company. So basically, you don't need any information from your supplier in order to generate this UFI code. And you just need the VAT number of your company and the internal formulation number. Now, I will conclude this brief overview with a few action points. Maybe needless to say, you need to get ready now. It's important to understand your obligation, and this depends on your role in the supply chain. As you say, the definition of duty holder has been debated for a long time, so we cannot say that it was clear, and probably still not fully clear, but you need to understand what's your role, which is your activities, basically, that you're doing, and whether you are modifying the mixture from your supplier or not, for example. There are some mixtures which may be exempted, so you have to consider this. And then it's important, in order to define the date of applicability and the information requirement, is the end use of your mixture, where the mixture ends up at the end of its life cycle. You may need to analyze your portfolio in some country. You may have already submitted an information. You may benefit from the transitional period and so on. You need to invest maybe a bit more in communication. This is because you need information both from your customer and from your supplier, or your customer and your supplier, they may need information. For example, you now need the full composition. You may need to understand where your mixture ends up. You may want to discuss with your distributor whether you want to, she wants you to cover his information or not. You need to know the information requirements, because they are probably more detailed than what was required up to now. In most member states, I know that the submission of the STS was enough. Now the STS, if you want, you can still attach it, but this doesn't replace the information requirement. Basically, you cannot just submit an SDS now. The composition has to be provided up to almost 100%. There are much stricter limit and threshold than in the SDS, for instance. So the non-hazardous components, they need to be indicated. The component present a very low concentration as well. And you can decide then whether to provide exact concentration or ranges as defined in Annex 8. The toxicological information are important because it's the information that actually the emergency operator then eventually will use. They may need to be reviewed. In principle, are the same information as you have in section 11. But since you're not providing the poison center operator is not supposed to open the SDS and start checking whether there are, for example, cross-references to other sections, so this needs to be avoided. So the information, the toxicological information has to be clear and concise. Finally, there's something to do. The UFI, it's a small code, alphanumeric code, but needs to be placed on the label. So for sure, there is some consideration and planning to do in order to relabel your product. You have to generate, assign the UFI, and place it on the label. And the placing on the label should coincide with the submission as much as possible. Basically, you should not place on the market a UFI which is empty. There's no information behind it. And that's it from my side. I hope that was short enough. So we will have question and answer later. Yes, so I can pass the microphone to
Thank you very much, Daniele. So yes, very interesting presentation indeed on the who, when, and what. Lots of information there. Hope like some of the basic questions were answered. Just a quick reminder for all of you, we have these presentations already online. So if you go to our ECA website and follow the link to the ECA conference, you can download the full package of the presentations from there, in case that's useful for you and to follow. But now, without any further ado, we move to the second presentation. Our colleague, Claudia Rimondo, will take care of explaining to all of us the IT tools that we have developed here in the European Chemicals Agency for preparing and submitting these notifications. So, Claudia, whenever you want.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Claudia, and I work in the Poison Center team. And the goal of my presentation today is introducing you to the tools that ECA has developed in order to support you in the preparation and the submission of your PCN dossiers. These tools can be grouped into three main categories: tools for the preparation of the dossiers, tools for the submission of the dossiers, and tools intended as information material for you to understand more what you have actually to do. And in this slide, I try to combine all these tools together, but we will see each one of them more in detail all along this presentation. So just to list them, for the ECA tools for the dossier preparation are the UFI generator, the EU product categorization system, the PCN format, Euclid, the ECA Cloud Services, and the validation assistant. For the submission part, the ECA tool available is the ECA submission portal, which is used both by industry and by appointed bodies. Let's go now more in detail, and let's have a look at the tools for the dossier preparation. The UFI generator has already been mentioned by my colleague Daniele, and the only thing I would like to add here is that in case you have to generate a high number of UFIs, you may also want to consider to integrate this UFI generator into your own IT systems. And to support you with that, ECA developed this UFI Developers Manual, which is available on the Poison Center website. It may be quite easy to use the UFI generator also because it is available in all the official languages. And if, again, you want to know more about how to use the UFI generator and how to use UFI in general, I invite you to watch the webinar you find on the UFI topic, again, on the Poison Center website. The second tool is the product categorization system, which is used by industry to describe the intended use of a mixture for which a submission has to be made. You will have the opportunity to see how this intended use can be described in the exercise that we are going to do later on. But for your information, this product categorization system is used also by appointed bodies and poison centers to facilitate reporting and monitoring of poisoning incidents at EU level. This tool is the outcome of a working group made of representatives from both industry and appointed bodies, and it's actually maintained by ECA. It is also subject to possible future changes. And for that, ECA has also put in place a specific procedure to update the product categorization system. which will be available in the EU official languages in the next future. And of course, as all the tools developed by ECHA, you can find also this one on the Poison Center website. Now, the third tool, maybe one of the most meaningful one, is the Poison Center format, already mentioned by Daniele. So I will not go much more in detail about the need to harmonize the information. I will just let you know that this is the tool in order for you to harmonize this information in the format required by Annex 8, the XML format. That for us it is a Euclid format. The first version of this PCN format was published in April last year. But then small updates here and there have been performed. And now the version 1.1 is available on the PCN website together with a number of other related documents, like the data model, like the guides to prepare PCN dossier, and also the developer's guide. Together with the PCN format, you can also find an example of a valid dossier, together with its corresponding preview, that can give you an idea of how a valid PCN dossier can look like. Now, let's move to how to prepare a PCN dossier. You actually have a number of options, and which one is most suitable to you, it really depends on your specific business needs and your IT systems. So the first way to prepare a PCN dossier is online in the ECHA submission portal. So the portal features the Euclid Cloud, a tool that guides you to the preparation of your dossier, allowing you to enter data manually and to store the information in the ECHA Cloud. Another way to prepare a dossier is maybe using an already known tool, Euclid 6 offline. And here you can enter your data manually by using a specific Poison Center notification interface. And this solution is usually used by those companies that have a local installation of Euclid. And the desktop and server version of the Euclid software are available on the Euclid website. You're going to have the link to the Euclid site directly at the end of this presentation. The third way to prepare a PCN dossier is using the PCN format in company's own system. What does that mean? That the company can prepare and create a PCN dossier in their own system using a Euclid-compatible PCN format. How to transfer then this dossier to the ECHA system, we will see it later on. At this point, it's important to highlight a specific aspect. You know that according to Annex 8, you should submit in the official languages of the member states where the mixture is placed on the market. Now, in case you want to prepare your PCN dossier using the online, using the Euclid Cloud, be informed that the tool that you will see in front of you has a user interface in English. But there are specific free text fields that are made available in multiple languages. You will see in practice how that works in the hands-on exercises. But I think it's important for you to remember this because it's a feature quite peculiar. And the way you do it is that from the very beginning of your dossier, you will be asked to indicate in which languages you want to provide information. From the system automatically will create as many free text fields as the languages that you have selected at the very beginning. And here is an example that you can see in this screenshot. In this example, at the beginning of my preparation, I selected Finnish and Swedish, and then I moved to the toxicological information, where there is the free text field, and there I find these free text fields available in both languages. Bear in mind that this feature applies to the toxicological information, which is mandatory, but also some information in the classification section and in the labeling section refer to certain hazard and precautionary statements. We will be happy to receive your feedback about this solution during the hands-on exercise. Another very important tool is the validation assistant. What is that? The validation assistant carries out checks according to a number of predefined rules in order to make sure that the information provided is provided as expected. Once you prepare your dossier, you can run the validation assistant before submitting it, and this is a feature available only for the Euclid Cloud and for standalone. If you want to use the system-to-system transfer, then the validation assistant runs upon submission. But what are the types of checks that the validation assistant runs? Mainly, it checks the presence of the information, meaning, are all the fields required to be filled in actually filled in? It checks also the consistency of the information. For instance, if at the beginning of the preparation of your dossier, you said, I'm preparing a limited submission notification, then all the information that you have to provide all along the dossier has to be consistent with the selection that you made at the beginning. And the validation assistant checks that. And then it also checks the accuracy and quality of the information. And as I give you an example, for instance, the pH has to be provided in a range between -3 and +15. Also bear in mind that most of these rules, the rules that the validation assistant runs, are the outcome, the result of the work of a working group born last year and made of representatives of both industry and member state. The outcome of the validation assistant is a validation report. So if your dossier is cool, no deficiencies are triggered, and everything is fine, you can go ahead, you can submit successfully, and your dossier will be made available to member states. But there may be cases when there are maybe deficiencies, but not so severe. Maybe these are just potential deficiencies. In that case, you can still submit successfully, but you will receive a report with the list of the potential deficiencies that you can decide to fix or not. And that report will be sent also to the member states where you want to place your mixture on the market. And then the member states have the right to come back to you asking for clarification, integration of information, whatever. The third outcome is a failure, meaning that there are such deficiencies that either you fix them or you will not be able to submit. Your submission will fail. Let's move now to the tools for the dossier submission. Now, in general, you already know that you have two options to submit. Either you can submit using the local systems of the member states or using the central system of ECHA. In the first case, for one mixture, you have to prepare as many dossiers as the member states where you want to place your mixture on the market. Plus, when you submit, you also have to take into account the submission modalities that every member state may have. On the other side, if you use the central system of ECHA, then for one mixture, you prepare one dossier, you submit only once to ECHA, and then is ECHA taking care of dispatching the dossier to the relevant member states. Now, which option is applicable to each member state? It's a choice of the member state itself, and this topic will be covered later on by my colleague Daniel. Let's move now to the tool that ECHA has developed in order for you to develop using the central system. It is called the ECHA Submission Portal, and as I said before, once you submit, the ECHA Submission Portal makes the dossier available to all the relevant member states indicated in the notification. There is also another way, which is submitting through a system-to-system transfer from the company's own system to the ECHA Submission Portal. However, bear in mind that this functionality is not available yet. It will be made available in the second half of 2019. The entry point of the ECHA Submission Portal is from the Poison Center website, where you can also find all the support and information material in order for you to ease this process. And as you know, we went live with this ECHA Submission Portal on the 24th of April. So we thought to give you a general overview of all the features that you can find in this version. Later on in the next presentation, we will show you also what you can expect in the next releases. But right now, what you have is a guided dossier preparation tool, as I said, Euclid Cloud, where you find the validation assistant. You find support to enter multilingual text, as we see earlier. But you also have the opportunity to preview the dossier that you are preparing in PDF at any time. And you can also use the provided online help. With the portal, you can easily upload and submit your dossiers. And once you submit, you get also a submission report. And in case you are failing some rule or you have some warning, then you can also have access to a validation report. The dossiers that you submit, are then stored in the cloud. And you can actually search among them using an advanced search functionality available in the ECHA submission portal. For you to know, this portal is used also by member states, because it is through the portal that the dossiers are dispatched to them. And they are dispatched to them via a country-specific secure folder. Then member states can access the folder, can download the dossier together with the related validation report. Let's move now to the final part of my presentation, which is about the information material you can find and use to prepare and submit your PCN notifications. Bear in mind that all this material, as I already mentioned maybe, is available on the Poison Center's website. You have a guide to dossier preparation and submission in case you want to prepare your dossiers in the cloud, using Euclid Cloud. On the website, you have specifically and in a very detailed way described the steps for industry to fulfill their new obligations under Article 45. And then there are also a couple of tables that my colleague Daniel will explain more in detail, but I think they may be really useful for you. One is a table telling you in which languages you have to submit your dossier according to the member states where you want to send your notification. And the other one is basically when is the member state ready to accept my notification. There you can also find the ECHA accounts manual in order for you to access the services that we have made available. I invite you also to watch our promotional animation that explains how to notify hazardous nature to poison centers, and also I invite you to have a look to the Q&A section and the publications, because there again you can find information not only about the tools, but also about all these new processes that you may have to follow. And as I said at the beginning, for your commodity, we also included the website, or the link to the Euclid website, where you can download the Euclid software, and the link to the ECHA cloud services. And from my side, this is all. Thank you for all your attention.
Thank you very much, Claudia. So we have now, Claudia has explained the tools that we have developed, and as we explained in the general agenda, you will have the opportunity to actually try it for yourself during the hands-on training. So again, we very much value your feedback, so please collect it, and we'll ask it from you later on. But we are very precise with the timing, so let's continue like that. And the next presentation is by my colleague, also member and expert of the Poison Centers, Daniel Sompolsky. And as we've been saying before, this topic of Poison Centers is very dynamic, as with any other new regulation. So Daniel will explain what are the foreseen changes that we can expect in the near future. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Javier, and good morning, everyone. Yes, the two previous presentations, they were focusing on where we are. So you have been explained what are the regulatory obligations with the current knowledge that we have on those matters. And then Claudia explained what are the IT tools available already now for the use so that you can prepare and submit your notification. But there is, of course, future coming, and my aim is here to explain you where we are, starting from where we are going to be in the near future. I will go therefore through the regulatory matters, also through the ECHA submission portal to explain what developments is about to come. And what is also very important is to understand that we as ECHA, we are in charge of harmonizing the system, but also facilitating the submission process. For that, to understand, it's very important to get to know what type of interaction there are between industry, ECHA, and member state during the submission process itself. And I would like to stop here for a few minutes. And last but not least, some few words about the national and ECHA help desk. So let's start with regulatory matters. As you know, probably every regulation has its own guidance. Also, this Annex 8 to the CFP regulation got its own guidance. It has been published in February this year. But as you could see in the presentation of my colleague, the role of distributors has been further explained in the previous months. So we expect that the version 1.1 that will address and clarify further the role of distributors as potential duty holders will be added to the guidance, and therefore in summer this year you can expect an updated guidance to be out. Shortly after the version 1.1 release, we would like to provide you with the translated versions into all EU languages. Some of you may already have heard that there is a proposed amendment to Annex 8 as such. Annex 8 has been adopted in March 2017, so it's more than 2 years ago. During that time, we all have learned some lessons, both on the regulatory level and also on practical implementation. And this is now reflected in the proposal to amend the Annex 8. There will be some editorial changes to make the terminology consistent so that the guidance, IT tools, and the regulation itself speaks the same language when it comes to terminology. But there is also a number of non-editorial changes proposed. For example, simplified rules for the group submission. Currently, the group submission requires, for example, that all the mixtures in a group must have the same product category, and this condition will be removed. Reporting of the mixture in mixture component will be slightly different than it is currently proposed in the legal text. What is important to mention here is that this amendment of Annex 8 does not address workability issues. I won't here explain the workability issues because I have the whole next slide about it, but to highlight this fact that this amendment doesn't cover this particular aspect. Bearing in mind the timelines we have, the upcoming elections of European Parliament, so all the political landscape, we expect that the amendment could be adopted in autumn this year, so a few months before the first applicability date starts. What is also important is to mention, because some of you may have read or heard, that there is also a proposal to postpone the first applicability date. The first applicability date of 1st January 2020 to postpone by 1 year so that both consumer and professional use product would have the same deadline, 1st January 2021. I must make some reservations here because, first of all, this proposal to change the applicability date was not part of the package for amendment of Annex 8 as such. So it's not included in this proposal. It's still in the discussion. But because of quite significant input from stakeholders, industry stakeholders, but also from member states, the Commission took very seriously this aspect, and this is being discussed whether this could be added also to this amendment that would be adopted in autumn. However, this is not entirely clear whether this is doable. Having this uncertainty in mind, we as ECHA, we advise everyone to continue preparations according to existing deadline. At least we as ECHA, from our side, we don't envisage any change in schedule when it comes to the delivery of IT tools or other matters in this regard. So let's hope that this may be adopted, but as I say, the word may is a key word here. And I mentioned before the workability issues. So when the Annex 8 was adopted in March 2017, already several industry sectors, among others petroleum, construction, gases, paints, perfumes, soaps, and detergent, they have highlighted a number of issues in terms of workability, in terms of practical implementation of the Annex 8 as it is now. So the Commission took all this feedback and requested a contractor to prepare a study on the workability and propose solutions to these workability issues identified. Just to give you an example of the workability issue, because I wouldn't like to spend the whole time on it, an example that is most occurring is when you have suppliers of raw material, well, you have multiple suppliers of the same raw material, it may pose a challenge in terms of UFI changes, the frequency of UFI changes. So this is one of the aspects that has been investigated by this study. And I have a message that yesterday the Commission launched the consultations with stakeholders on the draft final report. So yesterday we got the draft final report from the Commission, and it's in consultations with stakeholders until the 3rd of June. So from today, 2 weeks' time. So if you think that you are affected by this, speak to your industry organization to make sure that the issues that you have are also addressed appropriately. After the consultation will finish, the Commission expect to release the final report in summer this year. But what is very important to consider here, the European Commission is not bound by this report. So they will have a look, they will assess on their own whether the workability issues are real, what is the level of seriousness of these issues, and they may propose another amendment of Annex 8 to address these issues. But again, the word may is a key word here. There is no guarantee that what the report proposes automatically goes as an amendment of Annex 8. So I advise you to keep an eye on the updates in this regard, but there is nothing more at this stage that we can say as for granted for the change of Annex 8. So that was the part on the regulatory matters, so what will come in the nearest future. Now I would like to switch to the development in the area of the submission portal. My colleague, Claudia, she has already introduced you to the number of features that are available already now. And I would like now to extend this to provide you some information about what's coming in July and November, because these are the months where we expect to update our tools with some additional functionalities. First, when it comes to the submission portal itself, as you know, we are already live from 24th of April this year. In July and November, we will focus on enhancing the user interface in general for that. When it comes to the online dossier preparation tool, to the Euclid Cloud, currently you can prepare, create, save, and preview your dossier. And in July, we will provide some navigation improvements. And in November, we will also support the submission of a group submission. So you will be able to notify a group of mixtures of similar composition. So currently, this option is not available yet. When it comes to the dossier validation assistant, as you have heard, there is already an initial set of rules in place that help you to identify whether your dossier is okay. But the work continues with the group that has been mentioned, a group consisting of member state representatives and industry representatives. And we will look at the rules that are already in place, whether they need to be modified, and we will also provide some new rules. So enhanced set of rules can be expected also in July and in November. And the submission process itself. So currently, you can create your dossier, you can save it, then you have to upload and press the button submit. What we plan to do in July is to enable an option to have an online submission, so to make a more streamlined a process between the moment you create the dossier and the moment you submit it. But also, the system-to-system approach for automated submissions will be offered in July. When it comes to features for member states, I would like to focus on one element which I think is the most important for both industry and the member state itself, which is the data availability. So the moment when industry submit the dossier, so what's happening to this dossier on a member state level. So first, with this release that we went live on in April, we focus on those member states that intend to create local copies of data. So they intend to download this information that you have submitted for that member state using ECHA portal. So they will be able to download it via a secure folder. In July, we will continue focusing on this group of member states, and we will provide them with a possibility to have automatic dossier transfer to member states. This is called e-delivery service. It's a service of European Commission, not an ECHA service. But we as ECHA, we will act as facilitator for onboarding member states for this service. And then in November, we will focus on those member states that say, we don't want to create any local copies of data. We want to rely on ECHA database. So all the data that we will store also on behalf of those member states, and then they will have access to this database. So our aim in November is to deliver, to equip this member state with the possibility to use ECHA database with some basic query functionalities so that they can access and search information in the dossier. So I would like now to move to the dossier submission process. I explained earlier that it's very important to understand that we have harmonized the format. We have provided the tools for the preparation, for the preparation of dossiers, but we are not the only ones that are relevant in the submission process itself. It's also member state. And it's important to understand this interaction between ECHA, industry, and member states. My colleague already explained to you the two types, the local systems of member states and the central system of ECHA. So just to recap, the local systems means that a member state will create a local copy of data or that they will also ask you to submit directly to them. So that there are member states that will make this option available. And then central ECHA system, meaning that you send to us and we take care of making the data available to member states, meaning that we either physically allow them to create the local copy or we provide them with a database so that they can access directly with ECHA. Okay, so on this slide, I wanted to present you some statistics. We have inquired with member states asking how many of you actually will accept ECHA submission portal. And currently, the majority, because 19 member states, precisely speaking, the member states that are listed on the slide, I said, yes, we accept submissions only via ECHA systems, meaning that we don't provide any local submission system, so you have to go via ECHA. Then 3 member states, they said that they will accept notification via ECHA submission system, but they will also keep the local submission system. In other words, if you look at this, we can say that 22 member states, in fact, accept ECHA submission system. For 9 member states, we are still awaiting the reply. None of them said explicitly no, but we didn't hear an explicit yes from them yet. So we are still waiting. There is a number of other decisions that the member state had to take that we couldn't take, and these are quite important decisions. So we tried to gather them in this overview table that you can see screenshot on the slide, and there is also a link. And this table will be continuously updated whenever new information becomes available. So what type of information you will be able to find there? First of all, my colleague Claudia informed you already that there are some fields that you need to fill in the language of the member state, in the relevant language of the member state. The regulation says it must be an official language of that member state unless specified otherwise. So we have asked member state, are you okay with English? Not any other language, but only with English. And already 14 member states declared that English is okay for them. So if you go to this table, you will be able to find out which member states actually agreed to have English as that language of the free text field. And I really invite you to have a look there because you may need to revise a little bit the stereotypes you may have about some countries and their capabilities, the language capabilities, because the results are quite surprising, I must say. Another decision that member states had to take is whether they will charge any fees for the submission. We as ECHA, we don't charge anything. So the use of our IT tools for preparation and the submissions absolutely for free, both for industry and member states. But member states used to charge fees, some of them, and some of them will continue doing it. We learned also that some of them discontinued doing it because it became ECHA system. And some of them introduced them or consider introducing them. So again, this table may give you a flavor of what's the situation when it comes to fees per member state. What is also important is to understand the moment your dossier is being accepted. As you know, you have to submit a valid dossier before you place it on the market. But what does it mean you have submitted? For some member states, they said, the moment you have submitted to ECHA and you got a successful submission number, for us you are considered okay, go ahead with your product on the market. But there were some member states that made reservations. For example, they said because we create local copy of data, so you need to check in ECHA system whether the member state downloaded your dossier. And only then you are considered as accepted for placing on the market. Again, this table will give you an insight into that. And last but not least, the most important question you may ask, okay, ECHA went live 24th of April, very nice, but can we start notifying? So when will the member state use the portal effectively? And answer to this question will be also in this table. Currently none of them is ready to the extent that when you submit, it's considered as valid notification for that member state. Some of them made already declarations, so you will be able to see if a member state said, no matter how early we are ready, we will accept only from 1st January 2020. So you will already know that, okay, no point in submitting earlier. Some member states said, as soon as we are connected and we are ready, we start accepting, and it replaces the national obligation. So as you can see, there is lots of colors in this table, so we will change the colors anytime the new information becomes available. And to conclude my presentation, I would like to mention a few words about help desk, because we have national help desk and ECHA help desk, and it's also good to understand the distinction between the two. If you need advice on regulatory matters, especially in your own language, about things that are addressed in the guidance, and you need some further clarification, please contact national help desk. If you have identified from this table that a certain member state charges fees, please contact that member state and ask them, how do I pay, how much do I pay, because we, ECHA, we don't process the fees. If you have any other questions regarding the local submission systems in member states that do offer it, please contact the relevant member state. But if you have questions about tools to prepare that my colleague presented, which are entirely ECHA tools, if you have questions about the future in regulatory aspects, if you have some technical issues to access the systems, then of course we are the right partner to talk to. And using this link, you will be guided to the contact form for the CLP regulation. And for you specifically, we have also created a dedicated request type, which is Annex 8 poison centers. So please use this one if your question relates to that topic, so that your question can be quickly encoded and identified. Expert will deal with this as soon as possible. And I think with that, I'm ready to conclude and give the floor back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So now you have a better idea of what to expect in the near future. And indeed, we recommend that you keep an eye on the table that Daniel presented, since that will be evolving very much during the following months. At least we expect so. So with indication of when member states accept notifications and so on. So we concluded the first three presentations. We have now foreseen some time for questions, and then we'll try to answer them as best as we can. If you have a question to make, I remind you that you have to press the small button here, is like a mouth speaking, and then I will give you the floor from here, from the table. So we had foreseen time until 10 past 11 before we go for the coffee break. So that means we have now a bit more than 10 minutes. And then, of course, we can continue more informally during the coffee break with any other questions. So any brave one that has a question on all these things we've been discussing, just please press the button, and then the microphone will turn red when you can speak. So, yes, we have someone over there. Yes, please.
Good
you
morning.
Can introduce yourself at the beginning, just quickly your name and company, and then.
Yes, good morning. This is Carlos Fazendeiro from Only Core Cam. I have a question about IT tools to Claudia. In your presentation, you mentioned that it would be possible to use the Euclid standalone version. I remember attending a webinar on the new Euclid version, and one of your colleagues told me that it would not be possible to use the standalone version, only the cloud version, because of the language issues. In the meantime, I could also not find a practical guide for the standalone version, only for the cloud version. Could you be so kind to clarify?
You can prepare and create your dossier also using the Euclid standalone. But it is true that in Euclid standalone, the support for the multiple languages is not available. So if you want to provide information in multiple languages, you have to use Euclid Cloud. Okay, so that's true. But in terms of format of the dossier that you create, you can also use the Euclid standalone. As long as it is a nice XZ file, then that format is supported by the submission. You can submit that. But of course, it's true, the multilingual feature is not there.
Okay, so we move to the next question. Over there in the corner, please.
About the UEFI code on the label. Is that applicable for this? For example, once we create the UEFI code, as far as I know, based upon REACH and CLP regulation, if the product is very small, then we can use label element on the outer packaging. But at least the product have to contain hazard pictogram and the product identifier and company name and number. So what about the UEFI code? We have to also exempt it on the final small product if we apply on the outer package, or this is something unclear.
So, anyone wants to take it?
Yes, basically the UFI is a part of the labeling elements, and this should follow the normal rules that actually are not set in Annex 8, but in another part of the regulation. The UFI, we have also a guidance. I don't know if you had a look to the labeling guidance, which explains and gives also some example of different specific cases. But UFI is part of the label, so it should follow the normal rules. Now, even if UFI is technically, this was a discussion which was going on for some time, it's technically listed in the additional labeling elements. It was actually agreed that it's an identifier. Basically, the real use of the UFI is to be able to identify product, so it should be considered as an identifier. That's why, for example, the latest interpretation is that it should be included if relevant in section 1.1 of the SDS, for example. So you should think about the real use of the UFI. So the UFI has to be readily available, and the person who has an accident has to be able to communicate this code. There are no strict rules actually where to place this UFI on the label. For example, it was accepted by most of the member states that it could even be not exactly in the label, but very close to the labeling element. So there is some kind of freedom. The important thing is that it has to be available, clear, and should be placed in a way that, for example, if you lose the fold-out label, then the UFI should be there. It's a bit difficult to go into detail in each single case. So I would suggest you to have a look to the guidance where it explains already, it gives you different examples, for example. And then we can be in contact and discuss about the specific case.
Okay. So next one in the queue is here on the front row, lady. Now your microphone will turn red. Yes?
Yes. Thank you, Michelle Mendes from Total. So I have first question for Daniele. So in one of your slides, you were talking about the submitter details to be coherent with the label. And I was wondering about the practical point of view when you have a distributor and a supply chain that is a little complex, and how this information may be, if it is relabeled, for example, may be lost at some point. So I just was wondering on when we are doing the submission, we may enter the information of the first label, but after, if it is relabeled in the supply chain, how to manage to be sure that the information will be kept. I think you're talking specifically about the address, right, of the duty holder.
The point we know the Annex 8 first of all is not perfect, and we say it is under discussion how to amend it. The point of this, the reason why the Commission came up with this interpretation is exactly because we knew that there was a risk of losing information, and to try to reduce information gaps. Now the regulation is true, talks about submitter, and also there is this unfortunate wording of that's to be consistent with the label. Now there's nothing we can do for the moment. What we can do is to actually make sure that the relevant information, which is for instance, the identifiers is an important information because it allows the poison center to actually identify the product. So it needs to be included they have to be available to the appointed body. Then if the distributor wants to do it himself, okay, it's better. And then in the field of submitter, he will or she will include their name, the distributor name. Otherwise, if it's the formulator, the supplier which submit the information, he will have to include his own detail as a submitter, but then he will be able to include all the product identifier, new trade name, UFIs, and finally, eventually, this information will be available to the appointed body. We are not solving all the problem, we exactly know, and we have some legal constraint, so we are working also with the Commission to see at which extent we can adjust this also from a legal point of view.
Okay, we'll move to the next one. Questions keep on coming. That's good. There on the corner, give you now floor.
Hi, I'm Peter Sawinski from Helasoft. Thank you very much for your talks. I have a question, especially to slide 27 and the MIMS. Do I understand you correctly that I have to ensure that the MIMS I use in a certain country are known to the appointed body? So that could be possible that I buy a mixture in Austria, use this mixture in Germany to make a new product, and then I have to ensure that both UFIs are known to the appointed body. Did I understand this correctly?
The point is that if your mixture ends up in a different member state, the information has to be available. Then, for example, if your customer, which goes to another member state and wants to include in his final formulation a MIM, and wants to use, for example, the UFI because it doesn't have the full composition, so the information behind this UFI has to be available to member state. Otherwise, it's empty UFI. The alternative is that your distributor has access to the full composition. He doesn't need the UFI, and he can provide a full composition. But if your customer, which goes to another member state, wants to use the UFI inside his submission, this UFI has to be available to the member state, because otherwise it's useless.
Mm-hmm. I think Daniel wants to add something to this, please.
Yeah, I would like to complement this information. So this kind of rule has been established in a working group for validation rules, which we discussed with member states and industry, so that there is, again, no data gaps, so that the access to information is provided. As a result of this discussion, it was considered that it's a kind of such a serious requirement that it will become also part of amendment of Annex 8 that I was mentioning in my presentation, but I didn't give this example. But it is already on the table as a proposal that it's going to be also formalized that a mixture in mixture must be notified in a country where the final product is being placed on the market.
Okay, let's move on. Yep, here, please.
Thank you. It's Anna from
Wait a moment. Yeah. No, you don't need to press it anymore. I'll give you.
Sorry.
No.
It's Anna from the University of Santiago de Compostela. One of my questions it was about distributors and the consistency with Article 17 to the CLP, but you already answered, I think so. And the other one is about UFI, that is an identifier of the mixture as well as supplemental information. So in the SDS, you have to put in the section 1, subsection 1.1, and also in the section 2, or just only with the section 1.1? It's enough.
No, the latest interpretation is that it should be placed in 1.1. Now, I don't know if you are aware that Commission is working also on the amendment of Annex 2 to REACH. We don't know exactly when it will be published, but it's ongoing, and there will be actually specified. So then it will be 1.1.
Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe we can take the last question, which is the last one on the floor. Here, please.
My name is Andra. My name is Sandra Mihu from Total. I have a questions about the ECA database. Does this mean that in the future member states will have visibilities on, for example, on memes declared in other states? It will go toward an European database for emergency health response.
Vasilios.
So, at the moment, no. The member states will not have access to information of other member states. So if a meme has been notified to a different member state, only the specific member state will be able to see that thing. Maybe in the future this could be facilitated, but we need, of course, to see with the appointed bodies how we can create something more centralized in order to exchange this information in general all across Europe. But at the moment, the intention is not there. So everything will be specific for the country that the notification is submitted without anything exchanging through the searchable database, at least.
Yeah, okay, let's complement and then we'll close.
I would just like to complement because I understand that your question may arise also from the business perspective and the confidentiality of data. And that goes along the lines that we were just discussing about the fact that the mixture must be notified in the country of the destination of the final mixture. That was for the purpose that we didn't envisage sharing of this data between member states. So you really need to make a conscious decision that this member state will know about this, because we will not make this connection between across the Europe on the mixtures in mixtures.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. With this, we nicely close this Q&A session. So let's move to the next presentation. As I said before, this is the last one that is going to be streamed live for participants that are following online. They told me we had around 170 participants online, so yeah, quite a good group of people also following us from the distance, on top of the more than 100 here. So now for the rest of the day, basically I'm going to leave you with Vasilios Tsifoutis and Heidi Rasikari, they are here to my left, which are also members of the Poison Centers team, and will tell you how we have organized this hands-on training. So I give the floor to Vasilios, please. Wait a minute that I give you the microphone. There it goes.
So welcome back, everyone, from your coffee break. My name is Vasilios Tsifoutis. I'm also a member of the Poison Centers team, dealing with the product management in ECA in general. And before we go into the hands-on practical part, allow me first to set the scenes a bit with a small introduction of how we're going to run this whole thing today. So in general, the aim of today's training is for you to get familiar with the tools that we have built for you in order to prepare and submit your notifications. I have been talking with a couple of participants before during the coffee break, and I was pleased to see that they didn't access the portal yet, so it will be the first time. And this is also good for us to see the reactions and to get feedback, let's say, from users that will have the first contact with those tools. In general, today we are going to focus on the online tools. Before we had a discussion about offline and online preparation of dossiers. Today we'll focus on the online ones, where, depending of course also on the company requirements and your needs, could be more beneficial in certain cases. Because, for example, you will see here in the Euclid Cloud that you don't need to install Euclid because you have it online. You can access it from anywhere. So you don't need also to keep local copies of your data if you don't have to. Always in the Euclid Cloud, you have the latest version of Euclid there, meaning that all the latest features will be available, in much shorter period than the offline, let's say. And we consider it a bit more user-friendly, of course. And you will see also, I will introduce to you very briefly, the fact that if your company would like to outsource, let's say, the data preparation and submission for the Poison Centers, for example, to a consultant, you will have the possibility to do that by delegating access of your account to a third party in order to do the work for you. Now, if we move a bit on how to access the ECA's IT tools, we see here in the screenshot the ECA accounts page where you can sign up in case you don't have an account yet. The ECA accounts can be accessed either by the link that you see on the page there, on the slide, or directly from the entry point of the ECA submission portal. When you click to enter the ECA submission portal, first you will be prompted to this page in order to sign up or to log in. After you sign up, you will need to provide some more information about your company in order to encode your legal entity into the system. And here, just to make a distinction that usually the ECA tools, in principle, they are referred to the EU companies. In the cloud, non-EU companies can also have access and prepare their dossiers in the Euclid Cloud, but the system is configured in that way at the moment, currently, that the actual submission cannot happen from a non-EU legal entity. It has to be an EU legal entity, since the legislation is referred only to duty holders within the European Union. Now, when you sign up, the person who signs up from the company will automatically get the legal entity manager role in the ECA accounts. And what is that? The legal entity manager will have the possibility to create different users with the same account for different colleagues that you might have in the company in order to work with the same account and prepare, the dossiers depending on the regulation that you are working with. In order to access the Poison Center's tools, meaning the Euclid Cloud and the ECA submission portal, when the legal entity manager creates a user, then it will need to be assigned two specific roles. In order to be able to create dossiers in the Euclid Cloud, the user needs to be assigned the role Euclid Full Access. And in order to be able to submit the dossier, the user needs to be assigned the role Rich Manager. I mentioned before the possibility to delegate access from your account to a consultant, for example. This is the foreign user functionality. And this can happen as well in the ECA accounts. The legal entity manager can delegate access to some third party, and this third party will work under the company name. Now, more detailed information on how to sign up, how to assign roles, and what else happening in the ECA accounts can be found in the ECA accounts manual, which can be accessible from the ECA submission portal entry point, as you see also in the slide. And together there, you can see also the different other documents that my colleagues mentioned before. Everything can be accessed from this entry point. Now, we have done all this work for you. So for that, we just wanted to introduce it to you. You don't need to sign up. You don't need to create users. Everything is there for you. And we will be ready when you click in the screenshot ECA submission portal to access the actual portal. You will be prompted, as you will see in a while, to the search submission page, where you can search for your notifications that you have submitted. At the same time, we have the navigation bar on the top left corner, where you can navigate from the search page, for example, to the submission page, where you can drop your dossier and submit it to ECA. And this is the screenshot that you see there. And at the same time, you have also a link in order to go to the Euclid Cloud and create your dossier online. If you click on the Create Dossier Online, you will go to the Euclid Cloud, and there you can create your PCN dossier. The PCN guided preparation, let's say, in the cloud has been structured in such a way that there are two main task groups there. You have the task group of the mixture, where you will provide all the information about your mixture, and the task group of the product, where there you will provide all the information about your products. You will see there that each task group has a series of tasks. Here you can see in the screenshot the tasks that they are referred to the mixture task group. And from there, by clicking on them, you can create records and fill in all the information that is needed. So that was as a general introduction for me. And before I pass the floor to my colleague Heidi Rasikari, just also to tell you that you have in front of you on your desktop links to the ECA Poison Center's website. You have a link to the UFI generator, a link to Euclid 6, and a link to the ECA submission portal, the testing environment that we have internally. And this is the one that we will use today together with the Euclid Cloud, as I discussed before. You will have also from that link access to Google Drive to your folder there where you can find all the information and all the instructions for today's training, plus all the presentations that you have seen today. And when we start with the hands-on training, you will see a number of my colleagues here in NECA that they will be around, that they can assist you. Please don't hesitate to ask them anything that you need.